Here's an interview from one of our past shows on Rock and Metal Revival. If you're interested in hearing full shows, go to our Facebook page and check out our list of affiliates for times and places where you can hear Rock and Metal Revival.
That was Vertical Horizon from the Double Exposure album from one of my favorite guitarists, Vinnie Moore. And on the phone, we got none other than the man himself, Vinnie Moore. How you doing, Vinnie?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks so much for having me on. And yeah,
now
good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's an honor, dude. And like this Double Exposure album, it's a bit different than your usual releases because you got vocals on half of it, and then the other half is your usual instrumental. But you know, it took a couple listens, but then I noticed it's the same 6 songs, and on each side, but you know, one's instrumental and one's vocal. How'd you decide to do that? Because I mean, each song they stand up on their own, even that they're the same, you know, chord progressions and stuff.
I was trying to get 2 for the price of 1. No, okay. It was initially supposed to be all instrumental, and my plan was to release an EP with 6 songs, and It was during the whole lockdown thing, and, you know, I just got bored just not being on tour, being at home, and I thought, man, I've got to, like, shift gears and do something creative here and get busy, start working on something. So I came up with these songs, and I thought I'd put them out really quickly, you know, and get some product out there quickly, maybe even only digitally, you know, no CDs.
Yeah.
And so I made demos, and then one day I was listening to the demos, which I always do, kind of away from my studio, away from the guitar in my hand, and just, you know, focus on the songs and kind of try to come up with ideas as far as production, or maybe do I need to make any changes or whatever type of thing.
Yeah.
But as I was going through these listening sessions, I started hearing vocals in my head. And then I started actually just singing along with stuff, like some melodies. And I thought, hey, wait a minute. You know, all these songs could be vocal songs. Easy. They're just pretty much your straight-ahead rock songs. And so I came up with this idea to maybe get some of my friends to, you know, collaborate with me and sing on it, and that I could do 2 versions of each song. You know, instead of just doing 6 instrumentals, I could have 6 vocals as well, and it might be a cool yin and yang type of thing. And you know, I got that idea along the process, even though it wasn't really planned. It just sort of happened, and I went with it. So I thought, hey, why not do something a little quirky and crazy? Who cares?
Yeah, definitely. It worked. Yeah, and like I said, it took a couple listens for me to figure that out, and it was like, wow, that's a great idea because, yeah, they do stand on their own. So the singers were friends of yours? You just came up with?
Yeah, they were all guys I've known. Keith Slack, who sang on 2 of the songs, I met him in 1999. I was on a tour opening for MSG, and Keith was the singer. And I've always really liked him as a person. We became really good friends, and I've always loved his voice. And you know, we always talked about working together, but for whatever reason, you know, we were both busy with other things, and it just never happened. So he was kind of a no-brainer and popped into the top of my head immediately. And then Mike DeMeo is also a guy I worked with. He played keyboards with me on a European tour and actually sang a little bit on that tour too. And, you know, Ed Terry is a guy I worked with on a couple projects. You know, I've never even met him, but I liked his voice and I liked his creative ideas. And then Brian Stevenson, we were on a tour together. His Bad Old James opened up for us back in 2016. So, you know, it was just a matter of thinking of guys that I knew.
Okay. Well, that way it worked. I really like this album. And there's a lot of great guitar tones, a lot more bluesier tones you're going for on this one. And on the cover, you're playing a Epiphone SG, which is out of the ordinary for me seeing Vinnie Moore. You got like a Strat-shaped shredding machine, you know, not usually a SG. What drew you to the SG, and did you use it a lot on this album?
I used it a good amount on the record. I'm still a super Strat kind of guy, and pretty much have always been that. And I really love the SG, and can't believe I've never really owned one until now. And I just kind of fell in love with it, and used it on some solos and rhythms throughout the record. And I used a lot of different guitars on the record, and it was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to do the photo session for the record, I brought two guitars, a Super Strat and the Epiphone, and it turned out that the picture I liked most was me holding the Epiphone.
Yeah.
So I didn't think really much about it. And I like the way the SG looks, so I just kind of went with that for the cover. But I know I took some people by surprise, like, hey, is he playing an SG now? And, I'm still a Super Strat guy, but playing other guitars here and there, too. Why limit yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
It's my mistress.
Nice. Now, I learned about you back in like the late 80s in like the old Guitar Player magazine and stuff, and the rock magazines. There'd be some Shrapnel stuff, and I ordered your instructional videos and stuff, and I always wondered who was the guitarist or the band that inspired you to pick up the instrument to begin with, and what got you going into it?
From a very early age, I was into music in general, and then, as I became like, I don't know, I was going to say a teenager, but even before that, I just started getting into all the bands that any kid that age would get into, any rock band.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles were first, I think, Queen, Pink Floyd. You just start getting into the typical stuff that all the other kids are listening to. You hear about them word of mouth, and so I was just your basic rock kid, but those bands made me want to play guitar, and that's kind of why I got a guitar.
Nice.
Because I love the music so much.
Now, you said you opened for MSG back in the day. Now you're the guitarist for U.F.O, taking Michael Schenker's spot. I mean, not taking him. I mean, playing his parts, whatever. You're doing an excellent job at it. And did you ever, how did you get that gig? And did you ever talk to Michael afterwards? Did he ever give you some encouragement? Because you've done a phenomenal job.
It's kind of funny. We did like 32 shows on that tour. And, I never even dreamed that I would just like 4 years after that be joining U.F.O. It's just something that sort of came up. They were looking for a guitar player. I think they were initially trying to find a guy who was English, who lived in England, because, most of them live there. And they were kind of having trouble finding the right guy, so they expanded their search. And then at some point, we had a mutual friend who had worked with me, actually on the MSG tour. He was the tour manager and my guitar tech. His name was Jerry Carrillo. And he had done sound for U.F.O. at some point. And so he recommended me. He thought, hey, you guys are looking, and I think Vinny would be a good fit. And so I guess at some point my manager got involved and talked to U.F.O.'s manager, and I was asked to send a CD to Phil. So I put like 11 of my songs on a CD and sent it to him. Didn't really think much about it, and then probably like 2 weeks later, I got a call saying Phil really loved what he heard and would like you to join the band.
Wow. Just like that?
Yeah, and we didn't go out and tour first. The very first thing we did was work on the You Are Here record.
Okay.
So we started communicating on the phone, and I started sending him ideas, and we'd chat and discuss things. And at some point, we got together outside of Hanover, Germany, into a studio, just started rehearsing and going through the ideas and, choosing and sorting through things.
Okay. So, did you feel any pressure when you guys did start playing live to stick to the guitar solos that Michael laid down, but still put your own kind of spin in there? You got to have your own. You're a different player than he is. So, did you have any reservations about, stepping into those shoes?
Not really. I mean, maybe I was stupid, but I tend not to think about... I didn't think about it too much, to be honest. I just thought, I'll go out there. I grew up playing those songs with the records in my bedroom when I was a teenager, so I knew I could fit in, but then, also do my own thing. And, when I approach those songs live, I approach them exactly the way I would my own songs on stage. Whereas like certain solos and melodies are just, they're such a part of the song, and they have to be there because people would miss them if they weren't. You know, they expect to hear certain key things.
Yes. Yeah.
And then other places you can just kind of go off and improvise. It's kind of like, you know, it was what I actually did on the record. And I think there has to be some improvisation in there night to night, because that's what makes it special and unique and in the moment, kind of, so to speak.
Yeah.
But again, there's certain melodies and things where you have to play it because it's just part of the song. And so that's what I did. I just felt like I played the key parts, and then in other spots just kind of went off and improvised.
Nice, nice. Now, what's your favorite UFO song and guitar solo to play live?
There's a lot, actually. Too Hot to Handle, Rock Bottom, Lights Out. They're all so much fun to play. And, you know, hopefully we'll go out and play them again someday.
Yeah. How is Phil doing? I mean, is there going to be any more music coming out of UFO anytime soon?
He's doing a lot better, and I don't know what's going to happen at this point, actually. I think he would really like to in his heart of hearts, but I think he's going to have to... I know he's feeling better and doing better overall in general, but I think he's going to need to build up some confidence in, you know, what he can do and can't do. And so we'll just have to cross our fingers and wait. That's basically what I'm doing, but, you know, I'm not going to let it stop me. I got to continue working on stuff.
Yeah.
Other than that.
Now, has anybody from UFO complained that you're using great tunes on this album that they could have used on an upcoming album?
As of yet, no. I mean, because I've always, when we've done a UFO record, I've always delivered like lots of tunes, and Paul Raymond used to do the same, so there was always a lot to choose from for Phil.
Nice. Now, you also worked with Alice Cooper for a little while back in the day. Did the Hey Stupid album, played on that and did some touring with him. How was that, and what did you learn from Alice back then? I mean, that must have been kind of a learning experience.
Yeah, it was a very cool thing, a good experience for me. You know, I was still pretty young, and I hadn't been on an arena tour. Actually, we were playing outdoor sheds in the summer, but they were really big places, and kind of that was a first for me. So I learned a lot just by being on stage and having to perform in front of those crowds. But just seeing Alice and the way he was such a professional, because he's been in the business so long, and you know, you couldn't help but pick stuff up from that.
Yeah. Now, we've lost some influential guitarists in these last couple of years. I mean, we lost Eddie Van Halen, and we just lost Jeff Beck. Which one of those were a bigger influence on you?
Man, I've actually thought about that one. And I can't really say, because they were both two of my biggest influences, such a huge life-changing guitarist for me. I mean, I heard Jeff Beck when I had only been playing guitar for like 6 months. And, you know, I didn't know really about any guitarist at that point, but he was coming through Philadelphia on a tour, and there was a radio ad, you know, announcing the show dates, and they were playing some of his music in the background. And I thought, this sounds really good. I'll have to check this Jeff guy out.
Yeah.
And so I went to the local record store and looked through the bin, and they happened to have the Wired record, and I bought that. And, man, I listened to that like 4 gazillion times. It was such a big influence on me and totally changed the way I thought about guitar. In fact, like the first little bit of lead I ever learned was from the song Blue Wind. I figured out how to play the little melody, and I remember being like so proud, like, wow, I'm playing lead now, man.
Nice. Now, do you prefer the Les Paul era of Jeff Beck or his Strat with the tremolo? I mean, I watched that him doing the Ronnie Scott at the Ronnie Scott club, the live thing he did there, and man, when he plays with that Strat and the way he uses the volume and the tremolo is just, I've never heard that. I've never heard anything like that before. The way he controlled
amazing,
it.
And he's just one of those guys, no matter what he plays, he's going to get something magical out of it. I mean, I've seen some I've seen him on stage playing a Telecaster and just getting some great stuff out of that as well.
Ah, nice. So what was your first guitar back when you first started?
My first guitar was a J.C. Penney special. It was called a Teisco.
Oh, yeah.
And it came with a little amp that was made by Kay. And yeah, it was like a horrible guitar, really. I mean, kids nowadays have it so lucky because you get an inexpensive guitar and it plays really well.
Mm-hmm.
Back in those days, if you got a beginner guitar, it was pretty horrible. So I'm amazed like any of us stuck with it.
I believe that. I remember the old guitars, man. Yeah. Man, bad stuff. Now, is there a piece of gear that you wish you had back in the 80s or 90s that you have nowadays?
I think the whole computer-based recording studio setup, I've always been more comfortable playing at home on my own, writing songs and making demos, no pressure, and then I'd go into the studio and there'd be a certain amount of nerves. You'd have a limited amount of time. You'd have to get done stuff quickly, because you were on a budget, and the whole thing was it was a lot of pressure. And I always thought, man, if the gear ever got to the point where it was good enough where I could do my stuff at home, it'd be like heaven. And, it got to that point.
Yeah.
First with ADATs and now with computer setups. So this is kind of what I wish I always had, but to be honest, when I was home recording with my little 8-track cassette player,
nice.
There was something about the limitations of only having, basically 7 tracks, because 1 track was wasted with a SMPTE coding.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, with the limitations, you kind of
had to learn how to bounce.
It was almost a good thing. With unlimited amount of tracks, sometimes I go a little nuts adding too much stuff.
Yeah, I can see that. That could happen. Now, for a serious question, on the new album, do you think the song River Flow could have benefited from adding some cowbell?
Any song could benefit from cowbell.
That's what I think, man. I think any song, just a little cowbell. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be in there.
Totally. Even in the background, if it's a subliminal thing.
Yeah. So Vinny, tell us where we can get a hold of this album and find out what's going on with you.
Man, all the usual places, social media places like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the CDs on Amazon.com, Spotify, digital. Okay. Wherever you buy digital, it should be there. So
awesome.
And then I have my website, of course, Vinnie-Moore.com.
Cool.
So yeah, pretty much all the typical standard places.
Awesome. Well, Vinny, it's been an honor to have you on the show. Is there a track off the new album you'd like to play going out of the interview?
One of my favorites is Hummingbird, actually, and that has like a southern kind of vibe to it.
Okay.
Some of my early Skinner and Allman Brothers influences came out in that, I think.
Nice. All right, well, we're going to play that. And Vinnie Moore, it's been an honor to have you on the show.
Man, thanks so much. I totally appreciate it.